Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at a really significant piece of proposed law here in the UK.
That's right.
It's the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill 2024-25. We've got a detailed research briefing here, and our aim is to really pull out the key bits for you.
Exactly. Help you understand what this bill's about and, crucially, why it matters for UK politics and immigration.
Yeah, and the source we're using, it's a research briefing from the House of Commons Library, so pretty solid, objective stuff.
Absolutely. It gives a good, balanced overview of what the bill contains and the context around it.
So your mission, listening in, is to get a quick but thorough grasp of this major proposal. And just to set the scene, think about this.
Yeah.
Between 2018 and 2024, over 150,000 people arrived in the UK on small boats.
Wow. 150,000.
Yeah. That number alone really shows you the scale of what this bill is trying, at least in part, to address.
Okay, so let's dive in. A big part of this bill is about tackling organized immigration crime. What exactly are we talking about there? Right. So the briefing defines it pretty clearly. It's basically helping people enter or leave the UK without the proper authorization.
Okay.
Or, helping them get immigration permission fraudulently. And it's treated as a form of serious organized crime. The main driver, financial gain.
And it causes wider problems, doesn't it? The briefing talks about harms.
It does. Several big ones. There are the obvious security risks, people bypassing checks, but also, critically, links to other really nasty stuff like human trafficking, drug smuggling.
Right.
Then there's the exploitation of the migrants themselves, which is huge. And beyond that, the social and economic effects, pressure on services, impact on public confidence in the system. It's a whole web of issues.
Sounds incredibly complex. What makes it so tough for law enforcement to sort of get a grip on it?
Well, a few things really stand out. First, it's transnational. A lot of these gangs aren't even based in the UK. They're operating across Europe.
Makes sense. Hard to reach.
Exactly. Plus, they're increasingly online, coordinating things digitally, which adds another layer of difficulty. They're also very adaptable, flexible.
How so?
They might run legitimate businesses alongside the smuggling, like owning boats or transport companies. And they use these informal money transfer systems, like Hawala.
Hawala?
Yeah, it's basically an old trust-based system for moving money without formal bank transfers. Very hard to track the finances that way.
Okay, so that's the challenge. What's been the standard response up until now?
Well, the National Crime Agency, the NCA, has been the lead operational body. And back in 2015, they set up a task force called Project Invigor.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, a cross-government thing. And there's been increased funding specifically for this area more recently for 2023-25.
But now the new Labour government is talking about a step change. Sounds like a much bigger push.
It certainly sounds like it. They're framing people smuggling as a global security threat, almost like terrorism.
That's strong language.
It is. And the big move is creating this Border Security Command.
Yeah.
Actually started its work in summer 2024.
Ah, so it's already operational.
In a non-statutory way, yes.
Yeah.
The idea behind it is strong strategic leadership, modeled a bit on counterterrorism structures. They've committed 150 million in funding, too.
Okay.
And a big emphasis is on international cooperation, working with the G7, the Calais Group, making deals with source and transit countries.
But as always with these big plans, there must be questions, criticisms.
Oh, definitely. People are asking, how different is this really going to be from past efforts? Will this new command and the money actually make a bigger dent?
Fair question.
There's also skepticism about whether just focusing on law enforcement can solve it alone. It's such an international issue.
Needs cooperation.
Exactly. And you've got the sheer demand, the number of people wanting to make the journey. Plus, you take down one gang, another often pops up. It's like whack-a-mole sometimes.
So what are the alternatives being suggested?
Well, some argue for focusing more on returns agreements, maybe with France or the wider EU. Others say you need to tackle the pull factors, the reasons people might specifically choose to come to the UK.
Right. Addressing the root causes, perhaps.
And there's a debate, too. Should the focus be deterring the migrants themselves or really hitting the smugglers hard? It's not a settled argument.
Let's zoom in on the small boat crossings themselves. You mentioned the huge number, over 150,000 since 2018.
Yeah, it's a staggering figure. And nearly all who arrive that way claim asylum.
What are the recent trends?
Well, 2024 saw nearly 37,000 arrivals by small boat, up to the point the briefing was published. That's actually an increase on 2023, but still lower than the absolute peak year, which was 2022. August 2022 saw the highest single month ever, about 8,600 people.
And tragically, people die making these crossings.
They do. The French authorities have recorded at least 138 deaths. The International Organization for Migration, the IOM, actually puts the figure higher, around 227 if you include deaths that happen in northern France related to the crossings.
Mm.
It's grim.
A terrible human cost. For those who do make it across and claim asylum, what happens? Do most get protection?
Actually, yes. Of the claims that had been decided by September 2024, the majority, 71%, resulted in a grant of some kind of status.
That's interesting. So most are found to need protection.
Based on the decided cases, yes. And it's also worth remembering, while small boats get a lot of headlines, they don't make up the majority of all asylum claims in the UK. Other routes still account for more.
Okay. And despite the focus, actual prosecutions for the act of illegal entry seem quite low.
That's right. The briefing points to only 455 convictions between June 2022 and December 2024. The focus tends to be on people caught steering the boats, or maybe those with prior immigration breaches.
Not the organizers pulling the strings.
Rarely. They often manage to stay out of reach operating from abroad.
How do these crossings actually get organized? You hear about gangs.
Yeah, the briefing talks about the industrialization of it. These aren't amateurs. It's organized criminal gangs,
Yeah.
often networks of maybe 8 to 12 people.
Right.
The leaders might be overseas, logistics handled in France. They have people recruiting migrants, providing support. The boats themselves are often assembled in places like Turkey, then stored in Europe, moved to the coast.
And how do migrants connect with them?
Various ways.
Mhm.
Online, word of mouth, sometimes at specific hub points where migrants gather. Prices vary, services vary. Some people even end up working for the smugglers to pay for their passage.
So what are the authorities actually doing to stop the boats leaving France?
Well, the French use roadblocks. They put buoys in the water near the coast. But the gangs adapt. They just launch from different spots or use faster boats, sometimes called taxi boats. French police do intercept some boats near the shore. There have been reports of pullback tactics, which is controversial. But further out at sea, they tend not to intervene much, mainly citing safety risks.
And on the UK side, when a boat is in UK waters,
Yeah.
if they make contact with emergency services or border force intercepts them, the absolute priority is search and rescue, safety of life.
Once ashore, they go for initial processing, usually in Kent. Medical checks, basic details taken. Most then claim asylum and are moved into longer-term accommodation while that process happens.
Okay, let's turn to the bill itself then. The Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, introduced late January 2025, second reading set for Feb 10th. What's its main thrust?
The main focus is definitely law enforcement powers.
Yeah.
And making that border security commander role official, putting it into law. It's not primarily about changing the core asylum system itself apart from repealing some older laws.
What are the key bits, the main components?
Well, the bill's official long title gives you a clue. It covers border security, immigration, asylum, data sharing, serious crime stuff, those serious crime prevention orders, even qualification fees.
Quite broad then.
Yeah, but the key elements are establishing that border security commander role legally, creating new immigration offenses, these precursor ones, and an endangerment offense, giving immigration officers powers to seize phones.
Okay, the phone seizing power, that sounds significant.
It is. Also making it easier to share customs data from HMRC, using biometric data for relocation. And then the big repeals, getting rid of most of the Illegal Migration Act 2023 and all of the Safety of Rwanda Act 2024, plus some general criminal justice tweaks.
Let's talk about that border security commander. Putting it on a statutory footing, what does that really mean and why do it?
Clauses 1 to 12 deal with this. Basically, it makes the role official in law, appointed by the Home Secretary, likely a senior civil servant. The aim is to make it enduring, give it more authority, make it less dependent on the government of the day, perhaps.
And what will their job actually involve legally?
They'll have a duty to consider how to coordinate border security across government. They have to set up an advisory board, issue strategy documents after talking to that board, and write annual reports.
And you said someone's already doing this job.
Yes, Martin Hewitt is the current non-statutory commander, and the board exists. This bill just formalizes it all, gives it legal weight and specific powers and duties.
How does this commander interact with other agencies, police, MI5, etc.?
The bill talks about partner authorities, basically other public bodies with border roles. They'll have a legal duty to have regard to the commander's priorities.
Have regard. What does that mean in practice?
It means they have to consider it seriously. They can't just ignore it. They also have a duty to cooperate, quote, so far as appropriate and reasonably practicable. Intelligence services and the military have slightly different, separate cooperation arrangements laid out. It's all about trying to get everyone pulling in the same direction.
Okay, now these new law enforcement powers, the government clearly hopes they'll make a big difference.
That's the stated goal, yes. They expect more disruptions, more prosecutions, better intelligence. Although, interestingly, the bill's own impact assessment says the expected impact is actually uncertain.
Okay, so tell us about these precursor offenses first. Clauses 13 to 17. What are they?
Right. These are about criminalizing actions taken before someone actually tries to enter illegally. One is about supplying, offering, or even just handling relevant articles.
What counts as a relevant article?
Pretty much anything that isn't specifically listed as being for someone's well-being or safety. So potentially things like boat parts, maybe even maps, life jackets if used illicitly. It's broad. The key is whether you know or reasonably suspect they'll be used for illegal entry or facilitation.
Reasonably suspects. That sounds like a lower threshold than proving knowledge.
It is. Maximum sentence is 14 years. There are defenses, like having a reasonable excuse, maybe genuine rescue, or acting for a nonprofit helping asylum seekers for free. But there's a reverse burden of proof here.
Meaning the defendant has to prove their excuse.
Exactly.
Right.
Rather than the prosecution proving they didn't have one.
Okay, and the other precursor offense? About information.
Yes. That's about collecting, possessing, or even just viewing information that's likely to be useful for an unauthorized journey. Again, it hinges on having a reasonable suspicion about how it'll be used. Max sentence is 5 years.
Same kind of defenses.
Similar, yes. Reasonable excuse, collecting info for your own journey, or acting as a journalist, researcher, rescuer, or for one of those non-charging organizations. Again, reverse burden of proof for the defense.
And these apply even if the act happens outside the UK.
Yes, that's the extraterritorial bit. UK courts can prosecute these offenses even if committed abroad by anyone if the aim was facilitating illegal entry to the UK.
Then there's the endangerment offense in Clause 18. What's that about?
This creates a specific new crime. Endangering someone during an unauthorized sea crossing from France, Belgium, or the Netherlands if it results in illegal entry here. It covers acts causing risk of death or serious harm, from leaving land there to arriving here.
What kind of acts?
The government suggests things like refusing assistance at sea, perhaps overloading a boat, behaving dangerously. The maximum sentence is 5 or 6 years.
Aimed at deterring dangerous behavior during the crossing itself.
That's the idea. But it's drawn criticism, concerns that it might end up criminalizing the migrants themselves who might be in desperate situations.
Are there human rights concerns?
Potentially, yes. Questions around Article 2, right to life, and Article 8, right to private family life, of the ECHR have been raised. And again, like the other powers, whether it will actually deter anyone is uncertain.
Now, the powers for immigration officers regarding phones. Clauses 19 to 26. What can they do?
This gives them new powers to search people arriving without permission, seize electronic devices, specifically mentions mobile phones, and access the data on them.
On what grounds?
If they have reasonable suspicion, the device holds info about facilitation offenses, the smuggling networks.
So they can take your phone and look through it?
Yes. They can search the person, including outer clothing, even inside the mouth, seize the device, access it, copy data. It's quite a significant power.
Are there any checks on this? Safeguards?
There are some. It's supposed to be a one-time search in this context. There will be non-statutory guidance on how to use the powers, and devices should be returned when no longer needed for the investigation. But it's still a major intrusion based on reasonable suspicion.
And the bill isn't just about immigration crime, is it? Part 3 has broader crime measures.
Correct. Clauses 43 to 50 are about serious crime generally. New offenses for possessing or supplying things like 3D printed gun blueprints or vehicle concealment kits or pill presses.
Again, based on suspicion.
Reasonable suspicion they'll be used in serious crime, and that includes assisting unlawful immigration. Max 5 years for those. The Home Secretary can add more items to the list too.
And changes to serious crime prevention orders, SEPOs.
Yeah, expanding them, allowing electronic tagging. Bringing in interim orders while a full application is processed, though not for terror cases in Scotland or NI. More agencies can apply for them in England and Wales.
What else?
People under orders in England and Wales will have to notify authorities about certain personal info former. Failure is an offense. And interestingly, courts in England and Wales could impose an SCPO even if someone's acquitted of a crime, if they still think involvement in serious crime is likely.
That sounds controversial.
It potentially is, yes. Imposing restrictions after an acquittal.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Sharing customs data held by HMRC. What's changing there? Clauses 27 to 33.
Currently, HMRC faces quite strict rules on sharing customs data. This bill creates a new legal gateway.
To let them share more easily?
Essentially, yes. With specific government bodies, the border security commander, police, immigration officers, even other governments, but only for customs-related functions. Think movement of goods, cash, enforcing duties.
Can that data then be used for other things, like immigration checks?
There's a general rule against further sharing, especially internationally. But there are big exceptions allowing reuse and onward sharing within the UK, particularly within the Home Office for immigration or criminal investigations.
So customs data could end up being used for immigration enforcement.
It seems likely, yes, under these exceptions. HMRC can put restrictions on reuse, though, and all sharing still has to comply with data protection laws like GDPR and the Investigatory Powers Act.
Finally, the repeals. Getting rid of previous laws. Which ones are going? Clauses 37 to 39.
This is a big part of the bill. It repeals most of the Illegal Migration Act 2023.
The one that brought in the duty to detain and remove and refusal to process claims.
Exactly. Those core parts are set to go. But, importantly, some bits of the 2023 Act remain.
Such as?
Things like expanded detention powers, stricter rules for disqualifying people from modern slavery support, some technical changes for tribunal judges, rules about not processing claims from safe countries, the cap on safe and legal routes, and expanded rules on damaging an asylum seeker's credibility. So it's not a total wipeout of that act.
Okay, so some key parts remain. And the Rwanda Act.
The Safety of Rwanda Act 2024, that's being repealed entirely. Clause 39 gets rid of it, lock, stock, and barrel. Reflects the government's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan.
Right. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Summing up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways?
Well, this bill is really doubling down on law enforcement as the primary tool against organized immigration crime, especially the small boat crossings.
More powers, new offenses.
Exactly. New crimes targeting facilitation before it happens and dangerous behavior during crossings. Plus, those significant powers to search phones and better data sharing.
And at the same time, rolling back significant parts of the previous government's approach.
Yes, repealing most of the Illegal Migration Act and all the Rwanda legislation signals a clear shift away from those specific policies.
So for you listening, if you're interested in UK politics, immigration policy, this is a really key piece of legislation to watch. It suggests a pivot, doesn't it?
It really does. Moving the focus perhaps less from deterring the migrants directly, although elements of that remain, and more towards disrupting the smugglers, the criminal networks.
How these new powers are used, how effective they are, and the impact of repealing those previous acts that's going to shape the whole debate going forward.
Absolutely. It's a critical area.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. With all this emphasis on law enforcement, on disrupting the gangs, how might this bill actually change things for the individuals seeking asylum? What might the lived experience be like under these new rules, and could there be unintended consequences we haven't foreseen?
Yeah, that's the big question hanging over it as it goes through Parliament. Something to definitely keep thinking about.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We truly appreciate you tuning in to this podcast. Your time and support mean the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on future content. And if you found value in what we shared, we'd love for you to leave a review or share it with a friend. It helps us grow and keep bringing you amazing episodes. Stay connected, stay curious, and we'll catch you in the next one. Until then, keep listening and keep exploring. Jardim, thank you. Podcast community. Subscribe now.